Good evening, and welcome back to part 3 of our definitive, incredible, perfect, absolutely infallible tier list. Where we left off placing, what was it? We adjusted the GameCube, moved it up, and I think we cut we're in Sony, it was tier
We did
7,
the
the
PS3
PS3
Super
Gen 3.
Cinema. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, and we put that in B tier. It was a good performance, the best of the PS3. So we're here with the PSP is Sony's truest, I don't know, Sony's handheld. They wanted to get into the handheld business, and I think they did a good job with the start off. The weird, what were they called? UHDs? Was that
Yes.
the name of the discs? They were weird. They were like, if you took cartridges, or no, they were like portable hard drives. If you look at a hard drive and you take it apart, it's like this disc inside a housing, and it's a very strange thing. That's kind of what they gave us for the PSP, and what it could do was impressive. I think as far as handhelds go for that generation, it was easily the most capable thing for how it handled things. The DSs were still using cartridges, right? Which is very odd that Nintendo's pushed cartridge gaming and they've even returned to it with the Switch. But the PSP, I didn't have any issues with its performance. I thought it ran fine. It was a really good multi-tool, you know? You think about an iPod, and I don't mean an iPhone, I mean an iPod, where you can connect to Wi-Fi, so you have access to internet, you have these apps so you can play games and stuff. The PSP was more or less the same thing without a touchscreen. Right?
Huh.
It didn't have a touchscreen.
I could have sworn it did, but no, I think so. Maybe not.
The Vita, I think, definitely did, but I don't think
know
the
the Vita
PSP originally did. I don't know. Anyway, it's forgettable if it was, but it was I thought it was a good thing. It had internet connection. It was a useful tool. I used it to listen to music. I used it to browse the internet. It was a useful device. The biggest issue I find with it is that instead of a thumbstick, they give you a sliding ring. No, a sliding round pad. Like, I don't even know how you describe it. If you had a penny and you put it on a tiny stick, and that stick went into a tiny hole, that was the extent of motion and movement that the PSP gave you for that thumbstick, quote unquote thumbstick. And there was only one on the left side. The right side just didn't have one. So if you played the Battlefront that they put on PSP, you could use, there was, I think, just playing it like Metroid Prime, where you turn with the movement stick, or like an older game where the now strafing controls were turning controls. Or you could use the buttons as aiming, and kind of like the original PlayStation let you do with some things. Or hell, even the N64 let you do that with the C buttons.
Yeah.
Very weird. Not great, but overall, I thought it was a good device. I thought it was capable, it ran well, it had a good battery life, and it was able to do many things. And I thought that was great. I have no issues putting it. I think its design is fine. I have similar feelings towards its shape that I did about the Game Boy Advance. I thought the width was a good form factor for how you would hold things. You got the two bumpers on the sides. Could use triggers, but you know, it's a tiny thing, so what do you expect? I thought it was a solid piece. Maybe a little bulky for like the era, but I'm pretty sure my smartphone now is bulkier than that thing it was then. Because I have a Fold, Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 4. No, I'm sorry.
Oh, you have I didn't know you have the phone that folds.
Oh yeah, I have the Fold 4. I had the 3, and then when the 4 came out, I did a trade-in. I got like 50% off. It was awesome. But it's an incredibly powerful phone. It's got the screen thing, the screen protector. I thought it was actually the screen, but the screen protector on the inside will peel off after about a year. But then you can just take it off and your phone is fine. I've never had any issues with the screens. I've dropped the phone a few times, but the case is in almost perfect condition, maybe a little scratched in some spots, but it's a really good phone, and it's got an incredible camera. That's why I've been using it as my camera, is because it's just so much better than anything else. And I have my other Samsung phone here. I have a lot of Samsung phones. I think I have it. I had the what's it called? Edge. I think I had a 7, but I traded that in for the 8, I think. And the 8 I have on the side, where I use that in some of my earliest videos. I use that for a camera as well, so I could have multicam. It's actually really cool. But I it didn't work perfectly, so I wasn't able to use it all the time.
Gotcha.
But
Back to the PSP.
yeah, PSP I thought was a good console. I think it was a good device, and I don't know much about the PS Vita, but as far as I'm aware, it did nothing but improve on the PSP original. So
The only thing about the PS Vita is I feel like Sony gave up on it so quickly. I can't remember much games for the Vita coming out.
I think they went towards the remote play really fast with it. I think they were like, connect this to your PS4, and you can now play your PS4 games on the Vita remotely. But I don't know if they really had the capability to run it well. I don't know. I only know about this from other people. It's all anecdotal. But I do know that the PSP was solid. The controller design wasn't ideal, so maybe not an A tier, but I might put it in B tier just because that was my DS, you know. That's the one I spent time playing. And I think it might have actually been more capable than the DSi as far as side apps. But
so what would you give the PSP?
I want to put it in B tier.
B tier, okay.
I would put it above Xbox.
Okay.
Just because of its capabilities.
Yeah. I think that's fair. It's crazy. This is my last comment on the PSP. Every time I go to a retro game store, PSPs are so expensive for some reason. And I know they weren't that expensive when they were actually like in production. So I don't get why they've skyrocketed in price.
Yeah, I don't know, because it's not like it had any. It's not like it's groundbreaking in today's technology, right? Like, you can get a cheap third-party smartphone that's more capable than a current PSP would be.
Yeah, it's crazy. I just don't get it.
Yeah.
But now we are moving on to the Xbox One.
Time to move the F tier into a bigger zone.
Oh man. Xbox One gets an F.
Now hold up. I'm not going to disagree wholeheartedly, but we've said this with each Xbox iteration. The controller does get better every time.
That's true. The control. I said. I think I said this in part 2. The Xbox One controller is my favorite controller design ever.
Now we can defer those points into one of the later Xbox One versions.
Yes.
Okay, so
yes.
We'll just put the plain and simple original one, F tier.
The reason why it gets F tier is because I can't think of a more pathetic console design in my life. It's a fucking VHS player. It's the heaviest console I've ever owned in my life. It's heavier than the fat PS3. It's just so, it's bad. It's terrible. I hated the design. I thought it has one of the worst console launch. The worst console reveal of all time. They forced you to buy a Kinect originally with it. Like it forced you to have a Kinect.
That's pretty shit.
I hate the interface for it too. The freaking Xbox One menu and the way like everything is laid out is so terrible. I don't know what they were thinking when they designed the interface for this.
You remember the original Xbox 360 interface? How it was like a bunch of pages you could swipe between?
Yeah.
I thought that was leagues better than what they updated it to.
Yeah. The original 360 dashboard was great.
Yeah.
It was really fun, and each page was like a different color, and it was very tailored towards games and whatnot. And that's a big problem with the Xbox Series X is I saw, like, dude, I feel like the interface for the Series X, we'll get to it down the line, I feel it's like 60% ads, 40%.
That's such trash. Oh, man.
But yeah, Xbox One original gets an F tier for the worst design I've ever seen in a console, ever. Terrible.
Now, there's something to say. It is an Xbox. Not so Xy, but they do have their iconography on there.
Now, the Xbox One S, definitely improved on the design and actually introduced more colors, and
It is cleaner.
they brought back limited editions. Like there was a Gears of War console, there was a Halo 5 console, there was other different kinds of consoles. So they finally brought that back. Because remember, the original Xbox One was just black. You could only get one color. Um, so I'm willing to put the Xbox One S higher. Um, I still, I think the best design is the Xbox One X, design-wise, because I think it's the sleekest looking one. But I think Xbox One S, I'd probably put it same place I put the Xbox 360e, which is bottom of C.
Oh, so
I just,
that's a pretty big upgrade
I
from
mean,
F to C.
well, because the controller,
That's right,
it's a much better design. It's got the best controller I've ever had in my life.
and that doesn't
And
Are you gonna put Xbox One X also in an increased
I'm
range?
no, I'm gonna put it in C. I'm gonna put it a little higher.
Okay, so we'll move that to C. Where did you say? After or before the
Bottom
360?
of C, bottom of C.
Bottom of C.
And then the Xbox One X has the best Xbox One design with the best controller. I'll put that high C, in between 2600 and PS3 Gen 2.
Okay.
I'm not a big fan overall of the Xbox One design. Like, that's the reason why it's C tier. But they definitely improved with each iteration. I just think this is the point where Microsoft started losing their fucking minds with their console designs,
I think
which is a shame because the controllers are amazing.
Yeah, I think I have an Xbox One controller. I know I had one of the Xbox types of controllers. It wasn't a 360. It wasn't. I don't remember actually, but it got kind of wonky. It was really nice though. I used it for a very long time until I think I was gifted this DualSense because I really wanted it. And the DualSense it is leagues better. It's still really good. The Xbox One controller was fantastic, great response, very comfortable hold. But we'll get to the PS5 when we get there.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good for the Xbox One series. Now we move on to the 3DS. So it should go 3DS, and then 3DS XL, and then new 3DS, and new 3DS XL.
Perfect.
So the original 3DS, here's the thing. I like the 3DS. All they fucking did was take a DS and put on shitty 3D. That's all they fucking did. So I'm a little torn on what to do for these next four consoles. Did you ever have a 3DS?
I played one in the store as like the demo thing, and I really did like the 3D. I thought it was the coolest thing. The fact that you could, the fact that it was a slider was kind of weird. That you could turn it all the way up or partially up was weird. It should have just been on or off, but I can see why that would give you a headache to try to play because it's like flickering. Not a noticeable thing, but you know it's not just visible for both eyes. It's very strange.
And the other thing too, the reason why I'm going to dock points off this is because even Nintendo realized that not many people like 3D because they brought out the Nintendo 2DS and 2DS XL, which I didn't play. But the fact that even Nintendo was like, oh, people don't really like this 3D. Let's give them an option to not have 3D. So, like,
All
what
the
the fuck?
improvements minus the whole point.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, the 3DS could play way better games and, like, graphics wise and hardware wise than the regular DS. But I just feel like the 3DS, like, even though I enjoy it, it's just like, it's not as much as an amazing upgrade. Like the Game Boy SP versus the Game Boy, or the DS versus the Game Boy SP. I just feel like this wasn't a huge jump upgrade wise. And I do think, similar to the DS, that the standard 3DS is probably the worst out of these four.
Makes
But I'm
sense.
not going to, I still think it's a good handheld. I think it's a solid handheld. It's not horrible. It's not amazing, but it's solid.
What if
And
we, because they're all like the same thing, just slightly more improved, right?
yeah, each one is based.
They
I
don't
was
have
just going to
they don't
lightning.
have stark
Yeah,
issues.
yeah, I was going to lightning round these four because they're pretty much all the same. Besides, like, the new 3DS adds a couple of bullshit features, like a C stick, which nobody uses, and like amiibo functionality, which doesn't really matter anymore.
Okay.
But So if you want, I'm willing to just consolidate all 4 of these in just a 3DS
Perfect. That's
since
exactly what I was
original.
thinking.
And if we're gonna do that, I have no problem putting it high B, like
IB.
super high
Okay.
B.
Above the
Um,
PS2?
no,
Okay.
right before between the DSi XL and the PlayStation 2, and
Okay.
I'll just put the other 3DSs in the NA tier since they're all the same.
All right. Yeah. I was thinking, yeah, there's so much bloat here that I feel like they won't be unique enough to really be distinguished, and they're just iterations of the same exact thing in a way that's slightly different than the Xbox One X or the One S, and like
Mm-hmm.
those I feel like have bigger differences than these DSs. Minus the
Yeah, I mean,
C-Stick one, that seems like a real improvement, but if it's not going to
nobody
change our
uses.
rating, then it's just gonna inflate and make this harder to read.
See, they put in the C stick, but I never used it, and I talked to plenty of people that never used the C stick. So like, why did they even put it in? It
Yeah,
was weird.
I don't know. I can't say I even knew they did this many DSs.
Yeah.
um,
So yeah, so DS goes high B then, and that's consolidating all of them.
and this brings us to the most normal of what? Not normal. Wait, what the hell? The Switch is not the same generation as the Wii U.
Yeah, I don't know what they were doing with this.
I'm moving those
Let's move
to. We're gonna
Gen
skip the
9.
Switch and put them. Yeah, put them in 9. That's just nonsense.
Let's do Vita first before we do Wii U.
Okay, we'll bump that forward. Yeah, what do you think? We said before, I haven't played much with the Vita.
It's an improved PSP. Although you couldn't play PSP games on the Vita, which is very frustrating.
It was a unique library, and I don't think they even use the UHDs anymore.
No, they used the similar cards that the Switch did,
Makes
like
sense.
little
Yeah.
tiny
SD cards.
SD cards. But I mean, it was improved in the PSP, so I have no problem putting it right between the DSi and PSP.
All right, PSP Plus. There you go. All right, greatest
Oh
console
boy.
of all time.
Oh boy.
Now, I am gonna. This is gonna be a hot take in the inverse than it usually is. I like the Wii U. I like the design. I like the goal, and I like the gamepad. The challenge to the controller scheme by putting the thumbsticks on the top, and even with the Pro controllers, I thought was smart, and I thought it was comfortable. The Wii U Pro controller was one of my favorite controllers for a very long time. I played it, and I wished I could have used it more. I tried to find out ways to use it on my computer when I would play games with controller, and I just couldn't find anything reliable enough. I really liked it that much. The buttons were fine. The D-pad was fine. It wasn't anything special, but it was a nice change that felt natural. The thing didn't like was going from thumbsticks to main buttons, like the face buttons, wasn't great, but it was something that you could get used to. And I actually have a comment that follows that same train of thought when it comes to the Steam Link. Overall, though, the fact that you could use the pad as its own screen, and you can play it like a handheld, even though you were still kind of tethered to the same room, it was a comfort thing. Like, oh, here, you watch the TV. I'm gonna continue playing my games. I'm just gonna do it here, plug in my headphones. Nothing changes. You don't have to do this whole thing. And alternatively, you do get the TV. Now you have an extra display for whatever could be used for it. Like you said with the Dreamcast, you have this extra screen that can give you more information or change things. The Wii U, I thought, had a great ability to let you, oh, I want to access my inventory. I can hit the Wii U, use that here, the gamepad, tap this stuff, get what I want, handle it that way. More games. I wish more games were for the Wii U because it would have been amazing. We've talked about this before, but the companion apps on games, the Wii U was the perfect capability to show that could have been a much bigger thing. Imagine playing Fallout 4 and your Pip-Boy is right there. You don't have to pull up your tiny phone with its tiny screen. You got this bigger screen that's probably actually closer to a lore accurate clunky piece of crap than than a phone would ever be. And it would be amazing. But unfortunately, the games didn't work out for it. Its performance was shoddy. It wasn't powerful enough to really handle the designs that it was given. Its design as an aesthetic, and, it's a simple box. And that's kind of where we've gone to with a lot of these. They just kind of become simple shapes. And the Wii U itself was like, take a 3D or a DS and make it big. And now you have the Wii U. You have your big main screen that you don't touch, and you have your screen that's closer to your hands that you do touch. And it was a cool idea, and I thought they did a great job building it, bad job executing it, and making it work the way it should have.
Yeah, so
I want to give it a B.
yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you. The problem with the Wii U is Nintendo kind of lied when they first presented it, because when they first presented it, I remember thinking this too, was I thought originally it was going to be like the Switches now, where I could take the gamepad anywhere I want in my house and play Wii U games on it, and that's how they presented it at first.
Yeah.
Problem is, you can't be a certain distance away from the console before the gamepad shuts off.
Yep.
And additionally, developers hated the gamepad. It got to the point like the Tropical Freeze, like a Country Tropical Freeze, they don't even use the gamepad for anything.
And that's a Nintendo game.
Yeah, like Tropical Freeze, you don't use the gamepad for anything other than as a standard controller. Also, for some reason, Nintendo used this gloss plastic for their gamepad and console, which made it really susceptible to getting damaged and scuffed up.
Very fingerprinty.
Very fingerprinty.
Yeah.
There was no fucking stylus with the gamepad.
That's true. I guess.
Was there?
I don't recall it. I had a bunch of like third-party styluses that I had gotten.
Yeah, same. I didn't have a first-party stylus, so what the fuck is that about? And obviously, like, it's one of Nintendo's biggest failures sales-wise, but that's taken into account the games, which we don't factor in here. But I'm okay giving it a B. It had some really great ideas. Just, terrible execution. I think a low B. I think kind of on the lower end is fair.
I agree. Yeah, I think its design, its innovation, it had high hopes. I'll put it above the original PlayStation. You think next to PS3 would be okay?
I say between PS3 and Xbox.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think it really had a lot of good things going for it, and it just didn't work out. It's a failure, but it didn't have to be.
It had the potential to be great. It's just whether it was Nintendo kind of lying about stuff, or really it came down to the games.
Yeah, it was.
It
was bad marketing and bad dev kitting.
Yeah, there's so many like Ubisoft. Ubisoft was huge on the Wii U at first. There were a lot of Ubisoft games that came out, for the Wii U, like Zombie U,
Watch Dogs,
a bunch, Watch Dogs, and Ubisoft gave up on it. They're like, we can't develop for this.
Yeah, it is sad.
So, yeah, PS4.
Perfect time for the rain to kick in on the Ducks.
Sure.
PS4. Oh, what? This is out of order. Let me switch that up real quick. There we go.
It actually should go. I believe it should go PS4, PS4 Pro, and PS4 Gen 2, which is the Slim. So I'm pretty sure the PS4 Pro came out before the Slim.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Anyway, take it away.
Yeah. Well, PS4 I think was Sony's resurrection because Xbox fumbled so damn hard. They really just swapped right there. You have the Xbox original and the PlayStation 1. You're like, okay, these don't really compete with each other because they're the wrong generations. But Xbox being the introduction into the scene, PS2, they're like, okay, wow, PS2 is the biggest thing ever. Xbox like, okay, we can move in here. They made the 360 and they were like, look, this is our space now. Get out of here, Sony. And then Sony's like, oh. And then they made the PS3 and Sony was like, yeah, we're not winning this right now. Microsoft was like, oh yeah? Well, we're gonna take this gun and shoot ourselves in the foot. Here's the Xbox One. Garbage. And Sony was like, that's a good idea. We're gonna make a good console. And the PS4 happened.
It is funny how they flip-flop with each other.
And of course, that's not an accurate retelling of history, but it is very much what occurred between these two consoles. The PS4 was way better. way better than the Xbox One could have been. Its design, while not being perfect in any way, was nice and interesting. It changed things. They kept their black look. I think they did have a white one, but I have a black
Yeah,
one, and
I had the white one. It came with Destiny when it was released.
oh yeah, and but the black, it had that nice slanted angle. It could be stood up. It could lay down like the PS2 Slim could, and it kept a clean aesthetic. I still have mine. It works great. I was able to play the Spider-Man PS4, and it was fun. Its hardware, excuse me, was maybe lacking a little in the power department, but that's probably because they learned that just punching in too much hardware doesn't make a good console, and that's why the PS3 was kind of shitty. And so I think they dialed it back on the PS4, and that's what Xbox did backwards. They were like, we're gonna punch in a bunch of power into it and make a bad console. And the PS4 is just a better one. Adding the trackpad to the controller, they get innovation points, and that made a much more interesting, the best DualShock that they had up to date by far. Because DualSense didn't exist. That's a PS5 exclusive. So their DualShock 4 trackpad enabling a different type of interaction, and I think what makes it something that I'm kind of sad about on most consoles is that they made their button layout and they said you're not allowed to have any more buttons than this. You get the left click, right click, you get the bumpers and triggers, you get the face buttons and the D-pad, start and select. Then they changed start to select to like options and share for some dumbass reason. And then for Sony, they got rid of, or not, they didn't get rid of, but they replaced the select button with the share button and put the trackpad to make up for the lack of select button. So instead of hitting share, because that would be something else entirely, you still had the functionality of a back button or a select button, and that was a good thing. I think it worked out. I think that was the show that they're on the right track to making good consoles again.
The only unfortunate thing is the DualShock controller for the PS4 had I like the little touchpad. It also had a little it had sound could come out of it too.
Oh yeah, the speaker.
And a lot of early PS4 games utilized the trackpad and the sound feature a lot.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as the console went on, developers were just like, I'm not going to use that anymore. And I feel like they were missing out on using that because it was really cool to have that feature.
I agree. Yeah, one of the big issues with the PS4 controller was charging it. It had the worst charging port. Mine. I think I don't even know if it turns on anymore. I had to, wiggle it and have it wrapped around a certain way for it to actually sit into the slot properly to actually charge. But forget it. It's just, I tried to fix it myself, but the controller's not good for that. It was hard to fix.
I really hated the charge port for the PS4 controller too.
Yeah, was it micro USB? It was a bad iteration of USB, I think.
Very, very bad. But yeah, I have very fond memories of the PS4. I didn't, I think the PS4 Pro was pretty good. I mean, it more storage, faster load times. I believe it actually smaller profile. I actually believe it also had slightly better graphics than the PS4 base model, if I'm not mistaken.
Huh.
It's been a while because I had a PS4 Pro back in 2020.
I mean, if it had more,
years.
If it was more powerful, then it's likely that it just had a smoother.
Yes.
So it not necessarily improved textures and things like that, but just a smoother gameplay. Like, I'm sure playing Spider-Man PS4 on a Gen 2 or a Pro would have been way better than me playing on the base model.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how would you rank? Because for me, how would you rank these three?
I don't know how much. It'd probably go in order of that they're listed, as in bottom, upper. So PS4 would be the base in quality because they're all the same. It's kind of like the DS, and the other ones are just better versions of the first one. So I want to say that also fits well into B, maybe A tier, because I can't say that it really did anything particularly wrong.
Gotcha. Okay. No, I mean, it's tough because I feel like I have a lot more memories with base PS4, but I'm willing to definitely put the Pro and the Gen 2 a little bit higher. I think if I would do it, I would do like top of B for PS4 and A rank for the other two PS4s.
Just for that improved performance.
Yes.
Yeah,
Does that seem fair to you?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was thinking. Is like the base PS4 is going to be the worst version of it. So the other ones are guaranteed going to be better than it. I just wasn't sure where they exactly would go. I do think A tier is good. I like the PS4, but since I only ever had the classic, saying the other two that just work better would be the A tier that I'm happy substituting into.
Yeah.
All right, now we're at the Switch.
This is I think where you and I are gonna have differing opinions too.
I think so too. You take
I'll
this
let you
one.
take the wheel.
Okay.
Oh, okay, I'll take it. I'll take it. Look, when it comes to my experience with the Switch, I would say I spent I would say like 80% of my time with the Switch was in the dock and 20% was handheld. I hate the Joy-Cons. It's been well documented how the Joy-Con drift is a real thing. So much so that Nintendo acknowledged it and just said, deal with it. For those of you that don't know, Joy-Con drift is the control sticks over time start developing drift, so they won't stand still. The sticks will slightly tilt, causing the cursor, quote unquote, to drift. Just standard wear over time. Very huge issue with the Nintendo Switch, to the point where Nintendo opened and they acknowledged it and said, we're not gonna do shit. Good luck. Buy our Pro controller for $70. Now, if you play the Switch with a Pro controller, you're gonna have a great time. I love the Switch Pro controller. I think it's fantastic. I hated the dock. I don't know if you remember this. I went to a Michael's and bought a felt pad, cut up the felt pad and put it in my dock. I took the Switch out of the dock twice when I got it. 2 times and put it in very gently. And I scuffed up the back because of the dock, because it's just one big plastic casing with no padding whatsoever. So I bought felt strips, put them on the inside of the dock so that my Switch would stop getting scuffed up. The screen is way more prone to scratching than the Wii U, because the Wii U used something called Gorilla Glass, whereas the Switch just uses normal glass casing.
Yeah, like smartphone glass kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's more prone to scratching. Obviously, it's the most powerful handheld ever made. Some points to it for that. I'm just not a handheld guy with the Switch, so my opinions on its handheld are very limited, because I just played it primarily on the dock. I never had any problems with it overheating or crashing like that. I know there's some people, like when it first came out.
Really? I didn't know that was a thing at all.
Yeah, there's a very famous video from a guy called Crobe Cat. We've seen his videos before. He's done he's done various videos we used to watch way back a couple of years ago. But one of his most highly viewed, it might be his most viewed video, was when the Switch launched. Like, a lot of people were having issues with it just randomly crashing or overheating and shutting down, and the screen being really easily damaged. And yeah, it's his most viewed video. Nintendo Switch's painful launch, 27 million views.
Wow.
From 7 years ago. So it was well documented back then that there were a lot of issues, like the screen would break really easily. I can appreciate the console for. Oh, and by the way, they put the charge port at the bottom of the console. So if you're playing handheld and you need to charge it, you can't play handheld and charge at the same time.
Yeah, it's a pretty stupid design choice.
Yeah, very, very bad design choice. But,
especially because it had a kickstand. Like, I want to plug it in, use the kickstand, have it set up, play it while it's sitting down. No.
No. But I can appreciate it for what it's done. Again, it's the most powerful handheld ever made. It is currently the 3rd highest selling console of all time, behind the DS and the PS2. So obviously it's an extremely popular console.
I gotta say, it's sad that the DS oversold it.
Yeah, the DS almost is literally, I think, 0.9 million units, 0.9 million units away from being the highest selling console ever.
So it was at 900,000. Point nine
Yes.
million. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, those are some serious issues. I do like the Switch. I think it's one of the best things Nintendo's ever done. I think is the smartest thing that Nintendo has done. I quick aside. I just want to put the OLED at the like after the light. I don't think that belongs in Gen 9 either.
Yeah, I don't know why. Yeah, I don't know. But
It's kind
anyway,
of a weird choice that we didn't construct this list ourselves. But anyway, yeah, the Switch. I never had any issues with control drift. That wasn't a problem for me. I did have issues with the controllers being so darn fragile that if you
oh
chuck
yeah,
them at
yep.
the ground as hard as you possibly can, they actually break. I mean, what is that?
You know, if you apply enough force to the little Joy-Con holder, you could break it in half.
Oh man, I gotta
Did you
say,
know
I'm
that?
impressed about how well I was able to do that. Um, Mario Kart aside, um,
I forgot about chucking the Joy-Con on the floor.
uh,
Oh,
see, this isn't exactly a good thing for me to say, but I played a lot of the Switch for a while. I played a lot of Mario Kart. I got damn good at it.
yes, sir.
And I also bought a third party. I didn't realize it was third party because it was officially licensed, but it wasn't officially like constructed. You know, it wasn't a Nintendo product. It was Nintendo saying, "Yeah, you're allowed to sell this with our stuff." So I had a Nintendo licensed third party controller. I don't know if that makes sense properly, but I hope you get the idea of what I'm saying. It didn't have a
Yes.
rumble, which was kind of annoying. I didn't realize
Oh yeah.
that was so stupid that people even bothered to make a controller that didn't have some kind of rumble feature in this day and age. But playing Mario Kart, I got very angry, and I had a chair sitting in front of me, and I just slammed the edge of that controller right down into the chair, cracked it, and it worked, but it was a little broken. The actual what do you call them? The Joy-Cons. I did chuck one of those to the ground very hard. It was in a rubber housing, but I was very, very angry. So that rubber housing was not going to save it. That thing was obliterated.
I still think you snapping the holder in half is one of the most funny things I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, and that wasn't Mario Kart. That was trying to fight the boss in Smash Ultimate.
Yeah.
Because that is the most bullshit fight. Oh my god. I was cruising through the entire thing, but for some reason, that poison ground just constantly racking up my damage. No matter who I mained, I was screwed. It was the worst. It was absolute trash.
You did it so effortlessly too. Like there was no resistance. You
Just yeah, it was gone. No, yeah. Needless to say, I don't play the Switch anymore. But the the fact that the controller came with the slide-in controller adapter was, I think, a really cool thing. Most of the time, I feel like with these days, if you want something like that, they're only going to make you buy it. You're never going to get that within the box, and that came in the box. That was amazing. I also had a what do you call it? A screen protector. So I also didn't have any issues with screen scratching. I didn't notice anything on the back, but I didn't care. I didn't pay that much attention to the backside. But overall, good console. Loved it. Thought it was fun to play. Didn't have too many issues with it. Bad performance. It wasn't powerful enough. And because of that alone, I would take points away with it. I want to put it in. I would love for it to sit in the S tier because I think it's one of the best things that they've done. And the fact that it is a Switch, it is something that you can set it down and play like a console or pick it up and take on the go, was the greatest thing about it. I think it's too smart and too impressive to be in B tier. I like it in A.
I think A is perfect. I think it's one of the best things Nintendo created, but there's just too many flaws that I hope they improve with the Switch 2. To put it in S, because I can't hold it up to the same we do with the 360 and the PS2 Slim. But I definitely put it high A. And when it comes to the light and the OLED, okay, so at first I thought the light was stupid because it's like, what's the point? Just buy a normal Switch. And I still kind of feel that way, but I get it. Like, it's for, like, I want to buy a Switch, but I want to buy it at a more affordable price, and I don't plan on using the dock. I'm more of a handheld on the go gamer. Okay, if you want a more affordable Switch, get the Switch Lite. I get it. I still think you should just buy a normal Switch, but I understand why they did it. I think because you can't put it in the dock and you can only play handheld, that severely knocks points off of it.
I think it defeats the entire purpose of it being a Switch. Like
Yeah.
we said before with the Nintendo 2DS, you just took what made the 3DS exist and got rid of it because reasons. So like the Switch Lite, I feel like it's just the same thing.
I probably put it in C tier, honestly, because you're getting rid of half the functionality.
Yeah, it's not exceptionally designed relative. It's just a Switch, but worse. It takes the quality and the impressive aspects, the innovation that makes the Nintendo Switch what it is, and it makes it worse. And the fact that I understand that it's not something that you can dock and take the controllers off and use, but the fact that you couldn't just dock it and then use a Pro controller or other Joy-Cons, I thought was kind of weird. Like, that seems like
you can't use other Joy-Cons. Yeah,
that seems like that should be part of it, especially because the Nintendo Switch has what's it called? A split screen multiplayer, and the Switch Lite just doesn't do that. And if it does, then that sounds really weird.
I think all that alone makes it C tier. I wouldn't even put it in B.
Okay, where should I slide that?
I think between the SNES and the Dreamcast.
That's a big zone. I'll put it after the Game Boy.
No. But the SNES and the Dreamcast, put it between them.
Yeah, right now I have the SNES and the DS, then the Atari, then the Xbox, then the PS3.
Sorry.
I have a whole bunch of shit in between.
Put it right after the Dreamcast. So 2 Xboxes, Dreamcast, and then 3DS Lite. Sorry, that's what I meant.
Okay, after the Dreamcast.
Yeah.
On the upper side.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, and then that brings us to the OLED, which is just a Switch with a different screen.
The OLED is basically the Switch, but better handheld functionality. Bigger screen, better stand, charge port is placed differently, better display.
Where's the charge port?
It is on the top now, I believe.
So, can it use the same dock?
Yes.
So it's still centered, it's just on the top?
Yes.
Okay. How odd.
So because it's just a Switch but better handheld functionality, I think it goes in A. Because it's just a slight.
Well, now, okay, so on the regular Switch, the controllers come up from the top because you set it down that way, and then you just pull them up. Does the OLED, you pull them from the bottom?
What do you mean?
Like, so when you're taking the controllers off of the Switch, you can set them in the dock first, push the button on the controller, and slide the Joy-Cons off, and they slide upwards.
Oh, you know what? You're right. Yeah, I think maybe the charge port is on the bottom then, but I feel like they improved it. Maybe it's just because. Oh no! I remember now. They made the stand way bigger and encompassing the entire back, so you can charge and have the stand up at the same time.
Interesting.
Maybe. I think yeah.
Okay.
I only played the OLED once at a store similar to you.
Gotcha.
So I didn't. But because it's just a Switch but better handheld functionality, I think it goes in A.
Okay, this is a better version of the previous. Though the lack of controller colors on the base model is sad. I know you can just get other controllers.
Yeah, I mean the Joy-Cons are the exact same, so you know.
Yeah, I will say I am disappointed that Nintendo stopped doing their iconic blue or purple color. I thought that was something that should have. I know they have like special Joy-Cons, I think, that you can get are that color, but I wish it was the base model. I wish they just kept it that way.
Yeah, they stopped that with the Wii. They didn't do a purple Wii.
Yeah, that's a shame.
Well, that's why the Wii fucking sucks. So
that's Nintendo's downfall. All right, so that puts us in the Xbox Series shit.
You want to put? So I guess I'm down to put this in F tier, and I'll tell you why. This is the first console that's digital only.
It's the S, right?
Yep, no discs. Can't have discs. Got to do all digital. You will own nothing, and you will be happy.
Always online.
Always online. Horrible design. Like, I just hate the design. It's
I
a
don't mind
white
the
box.
design so much.
It just looks weird to me. It's a flat. It's like a rectangular box with a giant circle at the top. Like, I don't. It's weird.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely better than the original Xbox One. I got to put it at the top of F tier. It's going to go there.
Yeah, I think.
But does have the improved controllers. That is a good thing. But yeah, the design is just a box with ports.
And no disc capabilities. It's just we've talked about this in previous podcasts, but I hate that they're pushing all digital now.
Yeah. Actually, you know, that's something I wanted to mention regarding the Switch, was the fact that they're using the SD cards. Honestly, I think if they're going to sell physical copies, quote unquote physical copies of games anymore, I think keeping them in SD cards of sorts is the best way to do it, because not only it is possible, they can do it where an SD card is how you can play a game off an SD card, because there's plenty of games that do that sort of thing. They don't need to root into your fucking files. But
Yeah.
using that as the data thing, so you don't have to install an entire game, just add some kind of compatibility with the system. The flash memory it can be very fast, and I think that could really ease the load from people making these really expensive solid state drives and additions, and you can cut the cost down on the console itself, making it more accessible for more people by taking that extra cost and pushing it into SD cards that you can just punch in. Good. You could have multiple slots even, and it wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
I think
that's fair.
I think that would be the right way to go, but I'm not a computer scientist, so there could be flaws with what I'm suggesting, but I think it's capable, and I think it's possible.
Well, yeah, definitely F tier for this. Good lord.
And then the great obelisk.
And the fridge. The mini fridge. In fact, you can legitimately buy mini fridges that look like Series X's.
That's hilarious.
I mean, it's just it's an obelisk. It's a fridge. I got nothing else to say about it. It's a weird design. It's
I want to put it
something
above the Wii U and D tier.
Yeah, I think I was just gonna say I think D tier is perfect for it. It's just kind of
regular Wii.
It's very uninspiring to me. It just kind of exists, and it seems weird. It seems like, because like the original Xbox was a giant X, right?
Yep.
It seems like every iteration, like, because like the 360, like has a big, like you could see on the side of the 360 it says Xbox 360, and on the controller is the X logo, and on the original 360, what I'm trying to get at is it seems like the branding gets smaller and smaller with each console iteration, to the point where there's just a tiny little Xbox logo on the top left.
Yeah,
that's Series X.
It had an identity, and it slowly got smaller and smaller because they want it to be cleaner and sleeker instead of embracing it and making it part of the design. Like the Switch, the controllers are like the Switch logo is literally Joy-Cons. That is the design. That is part of its personality and what makes it what it is. The Xbox Series X and the Series S, they are rectangular prisms. Nothing special about them. S has a big circle. You know, the Xbox circles. The Series X, it's called the Series X. They could have done something more X related that could have fit. Elon Musk is rolling in his bed because he's not dead yet, but because the letter X isn't nearly as cool as it could be. And you know Elon loves cool X things. Old Muskie.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Series X, it's a design that lacks imagination.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a D rank. It's just I don't know. It's uninspiring, and maybe it reflects the state of modern gaming because that's how I would describe modern gaming, which is uninspired.
Uninspired, bland, and safe.
Yeah, I think that's and I think that perfectly goes into segueing into the PS5, which I think is a terrible design personally as well.
For over imagination.
You know what's weird too, and I saw a video about this the other week. Apparently, you can't lay it on its side without buying a really crappy, tiny little plastic thing you put in the center in order for it to stand parallel.
You can't tell
Like,
me that it didn't just fucking come with that.
I don't know if it did or not. I was watching a video of this guy saying he had to buy a tiny little plastic piece in order to stand the PS5 so that he could lay it flat. And maybe the one he did come with it at one point, and somebody lost it because this is a tiny clear plastic piece you have
Yeah.
to put in the center of the PS5 in order for it to lay down flat. And so if some kid gets that, PS5, no, they're gonna definitely lose that piece.
Yeah.
And the fact that you can't lay it on its side naturally is ridiculous.
That is, I think, a huge design flaw. And I think they could have solved it with just some simple ridges to sit on like the ends to fit to make it still sit square without changing the design too much. I think they could have figured that out and made the housing proper.
Yeah. Now, you've said it before. I've never actually used a dual sense controller, but you have, and you love the controller. You said it's your favorite controller, so
Absolutely.
that obviously gives it a lot of points for being your favorite controller. I just hate the console design. I think it's the worst console design Sony's ever made. It's close with the fat PS3, but I still think it's the worst design they've ever made. I also hate that they don't have any black versions either. They've had black variations for everything since the PS2, but for some reason there are zero black PS5s.
You know what's funny? We were talking about the Xbox One S. Like it's got that white with a little bit of black on it. It's a nice look. We like how that aesthetic is. But the PS5 being the big white with that black bit like that, it's not the same. Its balance is off, and it doesn't look nearly as good.
No, it doesn't. It looks weird. I'm surprised that 4 years in they haven't made any other different color variations. And you can pop off the plates really easily too. So the fact that they haven't made different colored official plates that aren't third party and crappy is mind blowing to me.
That is unfortunate because there are a lot of great replacement plates you can buy that make it look way cooler, more interesting, and things like that. But the fact that they aren't first party is a kind of an issue. I didn't. I know I mentioned that I had a third party, but also officially licensed controller for the Switch. That really doesn't change my ranking of the Switch. I think it with regardless it'd be the same because the controller was also based exactly off of their Pro controller design. But the PS5, I think the lack of that support is very sad. Maybe they are doing something with it, but we're moving towards PS6 timeline, so I don't think it's really get there.
Yeah. So where would you rank PS5?
Well, it's not really a console I've used. I don't know how it performs. If it's supposed to be better than PS4, then great. Controller design is the greatest thing I think Sony has done, and unless they turn their trackpad into a tiny touchscreen, I don't think they're going to do a better job for a while. The haptics on the controller are phenomenal. And the lack of this kind of design in the Xbox ones is where Xbox falls short. You have fine-tuned feeling in the controller. It's not going to make you feel like you're walking on different grounds when you heal it or when the rain's coming out. It feels like things are happening, that kind of stress you feel when your controller vibrates for whatever reason. You still kind of get that, and it takes some getting used to, but once you get used to it, it is very natural. It feels very good. The adaptive triggers are incredible. They are the greatest thing and the number one reason why I wanted to get a DualSense in the first place. Playing Helldivers 2, if you're playing it on PC and you're playing mouse and keyboard, stop. Get a DualSense.
Get some help.
It is a way better experience by far. Not only is just inputting stratagems way easier because you don't have to stop moving or rebind anything, you can just do it. The controller feels great. You get actual adaptive trigger support which is the biggest problem with PC gaming, is PS5 games that get ported over, they don't port over the controller support most of the time. And here's an example that just did a bad job. And I'll admit that there's things like that. World War Z. It's a fun game. I think it's very good, but their adaptive trigger support is trash. It is so poorly done. It is just, you have resistance when pulling the trigger now. Doesn't change between the guns you use. Doesn't have any unique feeling towards it. It's just now it's harder to pull the trigger. Like, that just sucked. That wasn't good. That was a bad way to do it. The DualSense 5 has the capability to be so much more. And of course, you can turn that off. It's a setting. I haven't played much of the Call of Duties, but I did play one of them on an actual PS5 with the DualSense 5 controller, and the different guns having the different feelings when you're nearing the ending of a magazine, and that the trigger feels slightly different, and all that stuff. It's huge. It feels so good, and it makes a world of difference. I think if we were saying the effect of each piece, like, here's let's say these things have a certain score they have to reach, right? Score is 100. The controllers, we give it 25% of the total. The console design, we give another 25%, and then 50% is the capabilities, right? I would say this controller increases the 25% to something closer to 30 or 35. It's that important of a distinction on previous iterations of controllers as a whole.
Yeah.
So that alone, I think, takes Sony takes the PS5 out of C tier.
Really? You put it in B?
I would put it in B exclusively because the controller is that much better than any controller I've ever used. The trackpad is incredibly perfect. It's incredibly responsive. The thumbsticks feel really good. They have a nice click. It's satisfying. The buttons are nice. They're clean. The bumpers are great. The D-pad is... every aspect about this controller is well done. They've got a textured grip so that it's comfortable to hold. The shape is the best shape they have, so it's even more comfortable to hold. I mentioned that I feel like I have bigger hands. This controller fits perfectly. The triggers, the bumpers, the thumbs. I don't play with the claw configuration where you put your index fingers down on the D-pad and the buttons, but I can switch seamlessly from going into just thumbs on thumbsticks to using the claws, and it doesn't feel weird. I need to push a button while I'm looking. I can do that. I can do all these things. The integrated microphone to go with the speaker is also a bonus. The fact that you can just plug a headset into the controller, and I believe you can do that with the Xbox Ones as well, are really big improvements. And I will say that while having a microphone in your controller is very good, it's also very bad. Especially, like, Helldivers is a good example. You're trying to play the damn game, and this person's on open mic, and you just hear click, click, crunch, crunch, click, crunch, crunch, because they're just jamming the fucking thumbsticks in one direction over and over again, and it's rough, but it adds an accessibility that people didn't have before. You don't have to buy a microphone to be part of a game anymore, you know? You're there, and because people might use it improperly doesn't mean that it itself is badly done. And I think that alone is what makes it, like, hell, the Sony's coming out with their newer handheld or remote device, right? And it's just like a PS5 controller split in half with a big screen in the middle, right?
That already came out, I thought.
It's not on the list though. But
wow.
I think that's a testament to how well done they've done their controller. Is that they didn't have to change a damn thing about it. All they had to do was slap a screen in the middle. And they made, not a whole console, but a new way to play your PS5. So that makes me want to put the PS5 in B tier. It's also a well-done console, right? I haven't heard anyone complain about what the PS5 is capable of. It looks great. It plays great. I don't know if it's got ray tracing active, but Dragon's Dogma 2 natively supports that, so it makes me feel like it does.
Fair
Um,
enough.
so I think it's capable and it hits all the things right. So maybe I'd put it above the PS4. I'd say the top of B.
I think I can respect that. I've never played the PS5. I just know that it looks weird, and I think the design is kind of wonky. But if you love the controller that much, and I've heard great things about the DualSense, I've heard really great things. So I have no problem putting it top B.
Yeah, the design does have the flaws. It's not. It looks like Seto Kaiba, right? It's his it's his
Yeah.
shirt and his turtleneck. It's kind of silly, but it does everything else so damn well. From what I know, I've only spent a very little bit of time playing it, but the controller is the go-to controller for playing games on PC, in my opinion. And that brings us to our final contender. And I know we're getting a little late on time here. I didn't think we would actually take this long, but I had a lot to say.
But
But
that makes it good.
the Steam Link. The Steam Link's a weird one, right? It's not a console. It's a thing. It's an accessory that goes to a computer. So I don't really want to give it a fair rating. It doesn't rate properly compared to real consoles because all it is a fancy wireless HDMI cable. However, its controller is very unique and I think is very important to address. I have that too. I won't grab it. So the Steam Link controller, you don't have a separate buttons for a D-pad. You have a strange trackpad with that's shaped. It's got direct. It's like it's imprinted with a big D-pad. That's the left deep. That's the left thumb pad. The right thumb pad is just a soft trackpad that's slightly round. This was Valve trying to say you can play PC games with the controller without losing the strength of playing with a mouse. And they were right. That was a good move. Very many people do not like the Steam controller. Very many people are very wrong. There are issues with the Steam controller. Those aren't the ones that they should be talking about. The D-pad trackpad is a little awkward, but it's got the ability to add scrolling functionality on top of just clicking it. So it's more capable than a regular D-pad. It does have a regular thumbstick on the left side. It doesn't have one on the right side. It uses the trackpad instead. And so you can shoot incredibly accurately. Also, point that I meant to put for the DualSense that the Nintendo Switch and the Wii U also get points for is the gyroscopic aiming. I think is incredibly good. It does the similar thing where you can aim fine and sharp and very well without having to use weird flicking of the thumbstick. So it in Helldivers, because this is the game that's actually used the functionality of the PS5 controller better than anyone else. As you aim down sights, and again, this is a setting you can turn on, you can aim and then use your controller as a whole to fine-tune where you're shooting. And it has increased my accuracy tenfold on headshots, on kills, on everything. And you can still use the thumbstick while you're doing it. It just allows you to do a finer thing. It's used in Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom on the Switch, and it's used in the Wii U for also Breath of the Wild. And as examples of what you can do this on. It's a very, very smart use. I don't believe the Steam Link has that, but the Steam controller's trackpad does give you the accuracy that can also offer. The same way you would with a mouse. It's very well done, and it handles very nicely. The biggest problem that I have with the Steam controller is the face buttons. They give you the X, A, B, Y in the same shape that Xbox does. But instead of the looking thumbstick being in the lower area, it's the upper trackpad is the looking thumbstick. Kind of similar to how... No, never mind. I just forget I was going to say anything. It's an inverse asymmetric style. So your movement thumbstick is on the lower side, like a PS4, PS5 controller, and then your trackpad is on the upper side, as if you had like a Wii U Pro controller with that thumbstick. But the face buttons are hard to press, and it's hard to press the right one. If you're going to use it, let's say you're emulating a Switch, and you know how they have the A, B button switched? Ha! On the Switch, as opposed to everybody else.
Yeah.
This Steam controller would be really good at feeling like you're doing the same buttons, but they're just going to have the wrong names on them. That's the way it feels, which is not a good thing, because it's still mapped normally. A is still A, it's not B. Whereas the Nintendo Switch actually maps the A and B to those letters where they are on the controller. So it would just work. It feels wrong to use the buttons. The triggers are nice. The bumpers are kind of clicky in a way that I don't like, but they're supposed to feel like a mouse. So they do the job right. And they have, because you're using these trackpads instead of thumbsticks, instead of having a design where it's arcing outward, it bends inward. And it works really well. It's a very ergonomic shape, and it feels very good. So for the Steam controller alone, I want to give it a C tier. Because the controller, it's not the best controller ever, but it is far from the worst. The N64, clearly worse. The Wii, absolutely worse. Saturn, Genesis, all worse iterations. I would rather use the Steam controller than a 360 controller, even.
Fair enough, yeah.
I think it's just that capable. It's that all those good things. I'm going to put it at the end of tier, the end of C, just because it doesn't really belong on this list, because it's not a console. It doesn't fit in. Its controller is the strongest thing about it. But the Steam Link itself is also a just good device. It's a very useful device. And its ability to switch, to play games clearly without losing too much resolution by streaming a game wirelessly is really good. And that's also to say that I have my computer plugged into my router, and I have my TV plugged into my router, and I have my Steam Link plugged into my router. So they're all plugged into the router, making that loss much less than it would be otherwise, purely wirelessly. But it still works very well, and it's still a good device, and I think it deserves a good score because of that.
Right on. Well, that's going to bring us to the end.
Yes, that was a lot. And that, there's still so many things on here. Computer, we disqualified just because it's not a console. It's a thing that you can play games on, but it doesn't fit in. It doesn't work. It's too generic. They're gray because they don't fit in. And
there's too many factors to a gaming PC too. I mean, keyboard, mouse, monitor.
Absolutely.
What type of computer, the company, what are the specs, the GPU, the RAM, everything. There's too many factors to really nail down, like, where would I rank computers?
Yeah, it's a generic thing that can't be properly quantized, if that's quantified, on a tier list about gaming consoles. It just doesn't work. And a lot of these don't. Stadia neither of us have used it, but it's not a console. It's a game streaming service. The Ouya was a glorified Android app game player. These things don't fit here. And then a bunch of the stuff that we never actually use, so we can't really tell you too much about. That's why we have our tier list the way we have, and why we're right. And why I'm right, David's right, and this list couldn't get any better.
You'll never find a better console tier list anywhere else, and don't even bother looking, because you just won't.
No, this is your one-stop shop for all things correct. And we'll ignore how everyone feels about Taco Bell, because I gotta say, people like Taco Bell way more than they should.
And hate McDonald's way more than they should.
But hey, that's just thank you guys so much for watching. Let us know how you feel about being wrong in the comments, or how you feel about being right, because you're one of those.
Exactly.
And go ahead and hit subscribe. We got our podcast usually comes out on Wednesdays. Sometimes we have to take breaks here and there, but usually that's the consistent day. So if you listen to our podcast, check then. That's when we'll have these videos going live. Subscribe so that it just shows up in your feed. Hit that bell so you get notified. Or Or don't. I don't recommend hitting the bell. It just sounds annoying.
And fuck the Wii.
And fuck the Wii. Yes. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.